Series of keynote speakers. We will be hosting a discussion with Celine Cousteau, who is a filmmaker and social and environmental advocate, who will be talking about her work to share the stories of the indigenous communities of the Javari territory of Brazil and their fight for their rights as guardians of globally important ecosystems. We hope you can join us for these future events. Tonight's event will start with a general introduction to the IIC. We'll feature reflections from members of the IIC community, and we'll end with a question and answer session. All attendees' mics and videos will be turned off throughout the duration of the event. Tonight's event is being recorded, and we will send you all a link to the recorded event tomorrow morning via email. Questions are encouraged, and we'll answer as many questions as we can as time allows. If you roll over the bottom portion of the Zoom webinar, you'll see a Q&A icon. Please use that feature to submit your questions, and we will read your questions at the end of the event. Also, we will conclude tonight's event with the world debut of the new IIC video that was created by Jake Lloyd and the William and Miriam Media team. And finally, we would like to invite you all to join the IIC after the event for a Zoom hangout, where we can answer more of your questions and talk a little bit more about the IIC. So we'll put a Zoom link in the chat if you'd like to join us after the event for a more informal discussion about the IIC. Tonight, you will hear from several members of the IIC staff, including our Executive Director, Robert Rose, our Faculty Director, John Swaddle, our Administrative Coordinator, Kathy Francillo, our Development Director, Craig Anzalone, who's from the Office of University Advancement, and the newest member of our team, Jasmine Dix, who's the Marketing and Communications Assistant, who's helping us launch our social media. You'll also hear from several members of the broader IIC community, including Pam Collins from Conservation International, Sarah Gottlieb from the Nature Conservancy, who is also a William and Mary alum, Professor Yabo Obasanjo, as well as 3 students who are part of the Conservation Research Program, including Neil Simpson, Tara Vasenth, and Kat Bagansky. Tonight, we'll be presenting the working IIC strategy and initiatives, but this really has been a community-led effort and is a product of the work of the amazing and growing IIC community. So we would like to especially thank our external advisory board, our steering committee and curriculum and research committees, the advancement team, the Office of Sustainability, Charles Center, the Entrepreneurship Center, the Center for Geospatial Analysis, the Center for Conservation Biology, the Global Research Institute, Highland, all of the faculty and conservation mentors that have helped us with our work, William and Mary leadership, and finally, the numerous conservation partners, faculty, staff, alumni, parents, and students who have met with us over the last year to help us with brainstorming and realizing the potential of the IIC. And lastly, we'd like to thank the Office of University Advancement for their help with tonight's event. Specifically, we'd like to thank Tim Von Stetten and Ashley Dustin, who have taken the lead on helping us advertise this exciting event. So without further ado, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight for an introduction to the Institute for Integrative Conservation. And I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. We're thrilled to have this opportunity to share a little bit more about the IIC with you and encourage participation and questions as we go along. So many of us here recognize the intrinsic value of biodiversity on Earth. It is the foundation of healthy ecosystems and the services they provide, and is directly linked to many of our industries and livelihoods, helps mitigate climate change and natural disasters. It's the basis of our food supply chains, filters air and water, and even serves as the inspiration and foundation of art, culture, and multiple ways of knowing. We know that humans are inextricably linked to the diversity of the environment. And we also know that the challenges of protecting healthy ecosystems are complex, from climate change to biodiversity loss, habitat loss, spread of disease. These are just a few of the threats that are critically impacting these healthy ecosystems. So now there is an urgent need for effective conservation solutions that ensure the conservation of biodiversity needed to promote human well-being. So finding solutions to conservation challenges requires new approaches that promote biodiversity and the benefits it provides to all human communities. And with these new approaches, we can envision a future where people and nature are irrevocably and justly connected, and the natural environment is conserved for future generations. To achieve this vision, we need integrative conservation solutions that are rooted in justice and that are scalable and transform our relationship to the environment. And we believe that with human ingenuity, effective partnerships, the application of expertise across sectors, and the inclusion of all, we will find solutions to global conservation challenges and find a future for conservation that is bright. To help contribute to conservation solutions around the globe, William & Mary at the end of 2018 was asked by an individual donor to propose something new in conservation. And John Swaddle, the faculty director, and I were thrilled to be brought in on this opportunity with really an open book in terms of what we were allowed to conjure up to develop this idea for a new conservation institute at William & Mary. As we developed the proposal with a lot of help from a lot of people across campus, we identified two significant areas where we felt the Institute could have the most impact. First, we proposed a way to help on-the-ground conservation efforts. We wanted to link actions that would improve conservation on the ground to the work being done across our campus. And second, build diversity in the next generation of conservation leaders. And so after the proposal process and the approval from the donor, we were thrilled to launch the Institute of Integrative Conservation in January of 2020 with the mission of cultivating an inclusive community of creative leaders to deliver innovative solutions to the world's most pressing conservation challenges. We achieved this mission by bringing together global expertise, diverse perspectives, and an entrepreneurial mindset to address emerging issues in a rapidly changing international environment. We also achieve this mission by strengthening the connections among people, communities, and nature to prepare the next generation of bold, compassionate, and principled conservationists to adapt and respond quickly to challenges as they arise. And we will take this approach by rooting everything that we do in our stated values of being transformative, responsive, inclusive, bold, and exemplary. So why William & Mary? We're a small school and we're taking on a huge, complex task. But we believe for many reasons that we can accomplish what we set out to. First, we have the capacity, expertise, and nimbleness to work across multiple disciplines. We have crucial strengths in the areas of life, physical, environmental, data, geospatial, and political sciences. Maybe most importantly, we have a diverse, engaged student body who are eager to participate in making the world a better place. We also have a robust alumni network of leaders, and that's really been apparent over this past year as we've reached out to many alumni and have had wonderful conversations with those people. And finally, we feel we had strong ties to the conservation community. Many people here on campus are currently working on conservation projects with conservation partners in the field. And so tonight you're going to hear the term integrative a lot. And we wanted to kind of share our vision of what we mean by integrative conservation, as is part of our name. And it takes on a few different forms. One, we think of integrative as an establishment of strong internal and external networks, where we are able to integrate across disciplines and sectors, connecting William and Mary internal expertise with conservation partners to advance global conservation. Through this integrative conservation network, we expect to collaborate with conservation NGOs, federal, state, and local agencies, international governments, other universities, private corporations, indigenous governments and communities, and local communities to advance global conservation challenges as defined by these external partners. We also mean integrative by looking across disciplines. We believe that the solution to these conservation challenges is going to take a multidisciplinary approach where we have input not only from conservation biologists and GIS nerds, but from business students and law students and people in the education department. It's going to take this diversity of opinions that is going to help us reach our goals of addressing conservation challenges. And finally, we hope to integrate local knowledge systems and alternative ways of knowing. So with support from internal and external partners, we are currently in the process of developing an adaptive strategic plan that will guide our efforts over the next 5 years. Still in progress and going a little slower than we had hoped, but we wanted to share some of our process here and talk about our strategic objectives and gain some feedback if anybody would like to respond to what they hear tonight. So we've set out this ambitious goal to advance integrative conservation solutions, integrative solutions to conservation problems around the globe. And to achieve this goal, we set out the following 4 objectives. Objective 1 is build a network of integrative conservation partners to advance conservation solutions. And I've described how we define that integrative conservation network and our goals of matching interdisciplinary expertise at William and Mary with the conservation needs of practitioners. We also see the IIC as a hub to make connections between complementary partners who can work together on integrative approaches to conservation. Next, our second objective is to grow a diverse conservation talent pipeline. And you'll hear more later about our curriculum, and that's going to be a major component of this objective. But the goal here is really to diversify the conservation field at all levels and at all locations to ensure unique perspectives, cultures, and backgrounds are represented in conservation solutions. We believe that it starts by building this inclusive IIC community, and we hope that our program here on campus will attract a diversity of William and Mary students with different majors, skill sets, racial and ethnic backgrounds, genders and experiences, and that a diverse IIC community will include our external partners. We hope that through this approach, we can begin to break down barriers in the conservation field where we see limitations because of a lack of diversity at times. Our third objective is to develop field sites for place-based learning and integrative conservation in context. And we see this as a critical role of those joint ventures with our conservation partners to develop these sites both locally and internationally and develop long-term partnerships that both contribute to meaningful conservation on the ground, but includes an opportunity for students to learn about conservation in and around the places where conservation matters most. This also is an important component of building cross-cultural awareness and the understanding of how conservation changes depending where you are around the world. And finally, our last objective is to bridge the knowledge action gap in conservation to make sure that research is applied and is informing conservation action on the ground. This includes improving communication streams between researchers and practitioners to ensure that research is useful and applied to the needs in the field. These objectives will prepare us to achieve our mission by bringing together global expertise, diverse perspectives, and an entrepreneurial mindset to address these emerging issues in conservation in a rapidly changing international environment. And finally, we believe this will help us achieve our mission by strengthening the connections among people, communities, and nature to prepare the next generation of bold, compassionate, and principled conservationists to adapt and respond quickly to the challenges as they arise.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Swaddle. I'm the faculty director of the IIC. And I'm going to go through a few of the highlights of the current programs that we have going already. And the first one I want to highlight is the Conservation Research Program. Even though we're just over a year old, we've launched several initiatives, and I think this is our sort of hallmark initiative, and it will be the foundation of much of the work that we have going forwards. These research experiences that students are involved in are applied. They're in collaboration with external partners to ensure that there's actual on-the-ground relevance and impact of the work. They're interdisciplinary in nature, as Rob and both Erica were talking about. And many of them address different facets of conservation. For example, in terms of the suite of projects that we have going right now, there are some that are focusing on education, some that are focusing on sustained livelihoods for people, some that are focused a little bit more on well-being, some that are truly centered in the social sciences, some that are centered in ecology. And we even have a great project on developing new technologies that we'll mention a little bit later on too as well. These are year-long programs, as we've decided on them right now, where students enroll in a spring semester. They, with their faculty mentor at William & Mary and with their conservation partner, they co-develop a proposal to ensure that the work is integrative and is addressing a current need. The summer is the real meat of the project, where the students get their feet well into the project and we support them with a stipend. And in the fall, they continue that work and produce the deliverables that are important, especially to the external partner that they work with. And throughout the whole experience, they're meeting regularly with their faculty partners, with their external partners. And so students are also getting the experience of working in the real world and negotiating different needs and different stakeholders as they go forwards. So here are some examples of the projects that we've got going right now. So on this slide, we have 4 students, and as you might see immediately, there are a range of different topics that they're approaching, quite different projects. And also they have different external partners, Conservation International, Highland Council of Descendant Advisors, which I'll talk about in a second, US Fish and Wildlife, USDS, and also an NGO in Ecuador and Tulane University that we've joined a partnership with. Also, each one of these students is coming from different areas, and that's an important facet of how we're putting together this portfolio of projects. So for example, Christina is majoring in biology and environmental sciences. Melissa is in government and theater. Madeline is in business and environmental policy. And Emilio is in data science and economics. So that's really realizing the breadth of how we want to make conservation relevant to everybody. And as you can see from the descriptions of these projects, some are approaching things from an indigenous point of view, like in Christina's work. Others are integrating environmental justice explicitly within the work, like what Melissa is doing with a team of students to develop the Highlands property, which is a campus of William & Mary out by Charlottesville, into a potential conservation lab that interacts with the history and the heritage of the site and the peoples that have worked at the site to then fully immerse environmental justice into conservation going forwards. Madeline's working on a business plan for a potential sustainable vanilla development, vanilla production enterprise within locals around a site in Ecuador. And Emilio is developing this technology example I was just mentioning a second ago, where he's with the US Fish and Wildlife taking aerial imagery, thermal imagery of cranes to then see if we can automatically count cranes just by flying a plane over the site. So using artificial intelligence to recognize the thermal signature of these animals to then do surveys much more easily. So the Conservation Research Program reaches our goals in many different ways, as you might have seen in terms of what Rob was talking about. So in essence, what we're trying to do is build these joint ventures with partners. And by joint ventures, we mean fully co-invested, co-designed projects that we hope to develop into long-term collaborations with external partners. because we feel that is a really productive way forwards for the partners, where we can augment their capacities with what William & Mary can offer, but also really embed William & Mary within the workings of external conservation partners. Importantly, these experiences are also helping students develop their skills, both as conservationists right now, learning different disciplines and how different disciplines interact with each other meaningfully to produce conservation solutions, but they're also developing individually as professionals, developing their negotiation skills, their communication skills, all of those things that are so fundamental for the success of careers going forwards. We also have an intention with these projects to develop some long-term research sites. It is important to think about conservation being a place-based activity and a challenge and a set of solutions. Every place is going to be slightly different, and we want to develop sites that we can use as living laboratories for students to be involved in, that bring together all these different interdisciplinary facets to address conservation solutions on the ground. And we also are using these programs to bridge that knowledge action gap that Rob was talking about, by actually producing the knowledge in place, hand in hand with the conservation organizations and with local communities to actually connect all the dots there, to really fill that gap going forwards. And as a testament to that, here's a little example of a quote from one of the external mentors from last year, Jeremy Radajewski from the Wildlife Conservation Society, who's talking about here a project that Kat Pagansky, who's a student that you'll hear from later on, I think, and her impact. We came to William & Mary with a real conservation problem, and the tools that Kat brought to this project in joint conservation thinking and mapping are really useful. It's not just an academic exercise, but rather her project will be implemented as part of our forest restoration work. And that meaningful impact is incredibly important to us. We want to see students have their work realized and know that their work is making a difference. So the conservation research projects is like a hallmark thing right now. Other things that are in development are integrative conservation curriculum. We have a proposal for a minor in integrative conservation out there right now, and we will be developing a major, an undergraduate major, over the next 2 or 3 years. And the goal here is, again, is to live the strategic objectives that Rob was indicating to as well. The curriculum itself is being co-designed with external partners to make sure that what we are helping students to learn and the skills that they're developing are relevant to their careers and enabling opportunities for them in the future. And so the central spine of this curriculum will be these research experiences. And around those research experiences, we'll be delivering this view of integrative conservation, which I'm going to present in another way visually to you as the intersection between 3 very related spheres. One is biodiversity. That is, in a way, our ultimate goal is to conserve biodiversity, the wildlife and the habitat and ecosystems, but we're doing that through human-centered lenses by thinking about the well-being of people, especially the people who live in areas of high and important biodiversity, and the community relations, making sure that communities' voices are heard, are involved right from the very beginning in designing the solutions, in just conceiving the problem, and that we can approach these issues in a just way and in terms of producing a sustainable solution that will work with the communities that are in that area. So going forwards, the integrative conservation curriculum is meeting all of these goals. We're collaborating across different units within William & Mary. We have people involved from multiple schools in designing this curriculum. We're also reaching outside of William & Mary to design the curriculum. We're broadening the diversity of conservation majors in the sense that we're bringing students into this program who would not normally necessarily be involved in conservation action. So we really want to have an impact that way. We're also developing place-based opportunities. In the longer term, we want sites in Virginia that students can go to, like the Highlands campus, that they can experience as part of classes as well as part of research experiences. And the applied research program that we talked about is going to be the central spine of this. This is the thing that's really going to realize the intersection between these areas for these students. So we're also working on what we're considering to be an external curriculum. And by that we mean capacity building opportunities. We're involved in several projects Conservation Toolbox project, which is a collaboration among many universities and NGOs to try and deliver tools that are useful and usable for the implementation community for conservationists on the ground. We're also considering a conservation NGO accelerator to help people not just launch, but grow their NGO enterprises around conservation solutions. And in the future, in a few years' time, we're also going to launch at William & Mary Summer Conservation Institute, where we host professionals from around the world to come and learn at William & Mary side by side with our students. So I think back to Erica.
So this work is really only possible with the support of our growing IIC Conservation Network. And we would like to invite you all to join this network to get involved with the IIC initiatives. There are several ways that you can get involved with the IIC. First, we'd like to encourage you all to subscribe to the IIC listserv to receive updates, to learn about upcoming events and initiatives, and to learn more about how you can get involved. You can sign up on our website, or you can subscribe to our listserv using the link in the chat. We also encourage you to continue to participate in our upcoming Conservation Speaker Series events that I mentioned earlier in our event. And also tomorrow you will receive an email summarizing the upcoming events in our follow-up email. We also encourage you specifically in early April to participate in our student conservation proposal presentations. The students who are part of the conservation research program that John just mentioned will be presenting their research proposals and would appreciate your feedback on their research. So please join us for their presentations to provide feedback. You can also follow us on Instagram, and you can help us build the IIC network by inviting others to subscribe to the listserv and to participate in upcoming events. And also, we encourage you to reach out to us if you have any ideas on how you specifically could get involved in the IIC. So please visit us at our website or email us at iic@wm.edu. We also invite you to listen to the IIC Conservation Stories podcast that was developed by Professor Dorothy Avis, Anna Kashmanian, and Ann Turner. The first season of the podcast focuses on multiple ways of knowing about the environment. And the second season, which is currently in development, will focus on gender and conservation. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify or Google Podcasts. Also, we're currently looking for conservation partners. So again, as Rob mentioned, non-governmental organizations, government agencies, private corporations, and local communities who are interested in partnering with the IIC on student-led applied conservation research as part of the conservation research program. We will be sending out a request for proposals in the fall of 2021 for these year-long projects that will start in the spring of 2022. We're also looking for conservation partners who are interested in serving as professional mentors for William & Mary students interested in the various careers in the conservation field. This might include giving students feedback on their research, joining a panel discussion, or serving as a guest speaker for a course. We also encourage conservation partners to share internships and career opportunities for William & Mary students and help us build our network. Similarly, we're looking for alumni, parents, and William & Mary community members who are interested in serving as professional mentors for William & Mary students. And you do not necessarily have to have expertise in conservation specifically, because we're looking to provide students with opportunities to learn the professional skills from across disciplines and sectors. You can also help us by sharing internship and career opportunities for students. And again, you can help us build our network. There are several ways that faculty and staff can get involved with the IIC. You can partner with conservation organizations in the IIC and applied conservation research. You can serve as a faculty mentor as part of the conservation research program, or you can propose research projects that are done in collaboration with external conservation partners. Again, we'll be sending out an RFP in the fall of 2021 for projects in 2022. You can also work with the IIC to co-develop integrative conservation curriculum, and we're working to broaden partnerships across William & Mary with various departments and offices to find ways that we can collaborate on programs, events, and research to enhance our collective impact. We encourage you to reach out to us to discuss opportunities for collaboration. Students can get involved with the IIC in many ways. Undergraduate students can apply for the year-long conservation research program. The application period will begin in the fall of 2021, and as I mentioned, the projects will begin in the spring of 2022. They can also enroll in integrative conservation courses. Also, we'd like to invite students to join a new IIC student leadership team that will be launching either this spring or early fall. Students can follow us on Instagram, and we encourage students to reach out to us with ideas for how they would like to get involved in the IIC. And finally, we encourage students to engage in upcoming events and programs. Specifically, we'd like to encourage students to participate in the upcoming William & Mary Global Innovation Challenge this spring. The IIC is thrilled to join the list of supporters for this student-led initiative. It's led by students for students. It's a hackathon-style case competition that gives interdisciplinary teams an opportunity to work with the international and sustainable development community to generate solutions to the world's greatest development issues. The challenge this year will be on March 19th and 20th, and students should register by March 12th. Reach out to the WMGIC team if you're interested. Lastly, we're really excited to announce that the IIC is going to be hosting an immersive mural pitch competition this spring. Inspired by Enrique Sanchez Rivera, an alum who I mentioned earlier, and who is also the CEO of Augmented Island Studios, has worked with artist Eric Scottness to develop murals and augmented reality experiences that are designed to inspire conservation action. So we are so inspired by their work that we would like to welcome William & Mary students to work on interdisciplinary teams to pitch an idea for a mural and a corresponding augmented reality Instagram app that should be designed to inspire the Williamsburg community to engage in conservation action. With support from the City of Williamsburg, the Office of Sustainability, and the Art History Department, we will be hosting a mural pitch competition in April, where student teams will pitch an idea for the conservation mural and an immersive AR experience. The team with the winning pitch will receive a cash prize and an opportunity to develop the mural and the augmented reality experience next fall with professional programmers and mural artists. So as we mentioned, the IIC work really is only possible because of the growing IIC network. And our aim is that this is a community-led initiative. Now we're going to have a chance to hear from reflections from the broader IIC community on their vision for the potential of the IIC. First, we'll hear from Dr. Pamela Collins, an associate scientist at Conservation International, who is working on their nature and the global sustainability agenda. Pam has mentored 2 William & Mary students on applied research projects as part of the conservation research program. Pam, thank you for all of your support.
And thank you for having me here this evening. It's a pleasure. Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here today. As said, I'm a research scientist at Conservation International, and I have had the distinct pleasure of mentoring 2 students from the IIC program, one last year and one this year. To, I guess, lend strength to some of the points that were made earlier this evening, these mentorship experiences I have found very valuable, and I think and hope the students have found them very valuable as well, because they're in an applied context. So these students have had the chance to leverage the technical skills that they're getting from the IIC, but also broaden their exposure to the research topic areas that we engage with at CI. And they also get exposure to the mechanics of working in an NGO, everything that's not just academic, you know, how you schedule meetings, how you handle multi-stakeholder collaborations, how you negotiate the direction that a project is going to go when different members of the project have different ideas about what the research focus should be or what the methods should be. All of those things that I never saw as an undergrad, these students get the opportunity to see through the types of internships that we have with them. So that's something that I wish that I'd had when I was an undergrad. And the projects that we have them work on are we give them a piece of a larger work stream that has a clear policy goal. So one is focusing on some guidance that we're going to be providing to the UN. Another is focusing on a collaboration that's ultimately, hopefully, going to provide some guidance to water resources management investing by international development aid organizations. So these are quite real, quite concrete things that we have these students engaging with. And there's a nice mentorship component to it as well. I've met with these students every week throughout the course of their time with us. And so we have regular check-ins. They get sort of that structured reporting, this is what I did this week. This is where I'm going next week. So that rhythm of working is something that we've also had the opportunity to build with them, which has been really fun. And as was mentioned, CI is definitely not the only NGO that's doing this. I don't remember how many there were at the last showcase at the end of the last season, at least 5 or 6 different NGOs where these students were engaged. So it was, and then, as the mentor, I got to see all of those and connect with those other NGOs. So there's also there's a networking benefit on my end as well, which is really, really nice. I think in general, getting as a student, whether somebody is going to continue on in academia or branch out into another sector, getting this exposure beyond academia this early in the career is quite valuable, whether it's in the NGO sector, the private sector, the public sector, whatever. There are so many real world constraints to what gets done and how it gets done that have nothing to do with the research or the science. Things like, budgetary appropriations considerations, political realities, the inertia of historical institutional design and what that means you can or cannot do, having to navigate those very human social structures. All cultural considerations, all of these things influence how work gets done. And when you're just focusing on studying the physical science or developing your GIS toolkit, you don't necessarily see those things or understand those things or kind of get how they influence real world outcomes. And so these partnerships that we have with these students are a chance to start, providing insight into how much more complex the policy reality is than any of us realized when we were coming up through our educations. So the thing about the IIC that I'm really excited about is that you guys take that approach, through your course design, but also through these internships and through the way that you bring in students from across a wide variety of areas. It's not something I've seen in other academic contexts. So I think that's pretty exciting and unique. And then from the NGO side, as I said, we get these networking opportunities and we get bright, motivated students who come in with good skill sets. So I think it's really a nice sort of symbiotic relationship. Oh, and just quickly, I know I'm running over time, but the intern we had last year was a specialist in business, economics, and data science. And we had him working on some water resources management stuff, which was totally outside what his training was, but he was super excited to learn. And he came in with some great ideas. And so that was a fun chance to broaden perspectives on both sides. And then the student this year, I think you might have seen on one of the slides, is doing a really cool project with myself and another researcher at CI, looking at the relationship between where Indigenous people and local communities' lands are and how that may or may not influence ecosystem services. And so that's a really nice sort of interdisciplinary analysis that we wanted to do. We needed someone to do it. And there was a student at the program who was really excited about it. So again, a really nice win-win. And I think with that, I'll close, but happy to discuss further during the Q&A. Thanks for having me here.
Great. Thank you so much, Pam. Next, we will hear from Sarah Gottlieb, who's a William & Mary alum and the Director of Freshwater Science and Strategy for the Nature Conservancy in Georgia. Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks, Erica, and thanks for having me tonight. Is everyone seeing and hearing me okay? All right, great. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm really excited about this program. And I just kind of wanted to reflect from the point of view of an alum, as Erica mentioned, and as someone who has worked in the conservation field since graduating, basically. One thing that I was really reflecting on while listening to the presentations is the level of integration between and among disciplines. including students and faculty, the organizations that you're working with externally and so forth, is really exciting. When I was at William & Mary, there was no major for what I was really interested in doing. I wasn't even sure what to call it at that time. I had an interdisciplinary studies major with a focus in environmental science, which meant that I took a lot of courses from a lot of different disciplines, and I got a wonderful foundation in all of those disciplines, but there was no integration between them. And that was something that I felt was really lacking, and I think has gotten so much better over the years at a variety of schools. And I'm so glad to see that William & Mary is doing that now. Also, you know, from the perspective of somebody who's worked in the field, and as somebody with a science background, I can definitely say that what is needed very much in conservation organizations is a variety of people from different backgrounds, from different disciplines, with different expertise. I mean, to see people who are majoring in marketing and government relations, policy, even theater, you name it. We need people with all of those kinds of backgrounds. And it can be really hard to find people who have those backgrounds, but also have a deep understanding of the conservation issues that are out there globally, and have ideas and some experience in helping to solve those problems. So I'm just so excited to see that William & Mary is taking this on. I also want to say that I've had the opportunity to mentor students, not from this program yet, but I hope so in the future. I've worked with students at other universities at a variety of levels, undergraduate and graduate, and I find it to be very stimulating and fun. We get a lot out of it, I hope, on both sides. For the most part, I've worked with students in sort of internship scenarios, but we've also had a couple of practicum type classes that were working kind of in a similar way to what was described with the research project, where we propose a problem that we need to have solved by people with maybe different set of expertise or a period of time to work on it. And that has included people, students along with their faculty advisors in the policy realm. We've had students work on everything from energy policy to conservation in urban spaces. I've had students work with me on mapping and GIS applications, and it's always been very rewarding. And I know as an alumni how incredibly talented the students at William & Mary are, how much potential they have. So I'm very excited to be able to hopefully have that opportunity to work with William & Mary students in this program in the future. I think that's about all I wanted to say. I'm just excited to be part of this community, and I hope I'll be able to contribute more in the future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your help, Sarah. Next, we will hear from Dr. Iyabo Obasanjo, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Kinesiology and Health Sciences at William & Mary. Thank you for joining us, Iyabo.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. I got associated with IIC when I was invited to join the steering committee as a representative from one of the departments in health, in arts and sciences. And from that, it morphed into the advisory committee, which I'm still on, faculty advisory committee. And from the start, I've found working with the IIC very interesting. I am a PhD epidemiologist with a degree in veterinary medicine. So the idea of conservation in terms of looking at at all species as one and trying to conserve all species is very interesting to me. The project I have ongoing right now with the IIC is a grant we got to create a One Health undergraduate course. What is One Health? One Health is the idea that the health on the globe is one, the health of humans, the health of animals, and the health of the environment and everything in it and all the species. The idea that if we're to conserve human health, we have to conserve the health of everything else that is on the planet. So this One Health course, this idea of One Health is really usually taught in graduate programs, and actually medical schools are now having One Health departments. The idea that you cannot just look at health from the human health and that by doing that, we're creating other problems. For example, even the COVID-19, which is why we are all looking at each other in little boxes, is part of the problem of One Health, because we know that COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease. The virus evolved from a coronavirus that infected another species, and slowly it mutated until it was able to infect humans and eventually be able to be transmitted human to human. So we need to understand what is going on in the animal kingdom and in other species. So I'm excited to work on that project with IIC. As part of that project, we are going to also look at different terrains on the globe where we have nomadic herdsmen, who are really some of the groups most affected by climate change. Nomadic tribes are under a lot of strain, and there are not that many left on the globe, mostly because it's becoming, the lifestyle is really not sustainable long-term overall. But at the same time, how do we transition these groups into different kinds of living arrangement? Because the areas they normally, the terrain is changing. We're going to look at Mongolia and northern Nigeria. These are areas where there still exist nomadic tribes, and in which rainfall patterns and other climate change factors are changing the areas they live, and water levels, and where they can get water to feed the animals, because most nomadic tribes is mostly about also, these are two areas where the nomads have animals that they move depending on the weather patterns to be able to graze on land. So we're going to look at the effect of rainfall and groundwater level on human diseases and animal diseases, and look for the association between all those factors, environmental factors, and the health of animals and humans, and see how things could, and also look at factors that could change to ameliorate all those effects. So I'm excited to be part of IIC. I'm happy to continue to work with them. I'm happy that we can also put a public health, I teach public health courses, and to kind of look at conservation through the lens of public health and the health of the globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Yabo. We really appreciate your help. And finally, we're going to hear reflections from 3 current William & Mary's undergraduate students who are currently part of the conservation research program. We will start with Neil Simpson, who is a junior who is majoring in geology and minoring in environmental science. Thank you for joining us, Neil.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Like Erica said, my name is Neil Simpson. I am a junior here at the college, and I am a geology major with a focus in environmental geology. I'm so excited to be here and so thrilled to get to share all the IIC has to offer with you all. Personally, I've been interested in working in the environmental field for pretty much as long as I can remember. My grandfather and uncle both worked for the Indian Forest Service, so a lot of my childhood was filled with stories about the jungles of South Asia and the expeditions that they would go on. And I think as a kid, I definitely liked to hear about the tigers, cobras, and elephants that they had to talk about. But now I can definitely reflect on what was so important about those stories was the collaboration in conservation, not only between disciplines of science, but between different countries and cultures, and working together to achieve that common goal. Personally, as a geology student, I'm very interested in landscape development, climate change, and using that knowledge to promote sustainability across all levels. I'm so thankful for the geology department here that's exposed me to this career path that I'm really excited to go down, and so excited to now get to work with the IIC and expand upon that. So my project that I'm going to be working on is working with Fundación para la Conservación de los Andes Tropicales, or FCAT for short, which is an NGO in Ecuador. I will be assessing land cover change in the Choco rainforest, which is in northwestern Ecuador, and using GIS and remote sensing software in order to get a good sense of where we can preserve biodiversity in this region, as well as support sustainable agriculture for the people that are going to be depending on it. Then Madeline, who is another student, is going to be developing a business plan for sustainable vanilla production in those areas that we work together. And I think this project really speaks to what makes the IIC so special, because we're going to use this kind of interdisciplinary collaboration between different fields of social and natural sciences in order to not only conserve what's already there, but also create a future where we can be sustainable and conserve. I think as we move forward, we want to think of conservation as not only just traditional conservation biology, but all of the ways that we can work together to build a society that respects, honors, and values all that nature has to offer us. I definitely wish that I had the IIC here as a freshman, but I'm so excited to see where it takes students. The interdisciplinary approach to conservation will not only benefit the environment and the ecosystems that depend on it, but I think it'll allow members of the William and Mary community, from students, faculty, and staff on campus, to find ways to be more in touch with nature. Understanding the ways that our actions relate to conservation is going to prepare these students, including myself, to think critically and create real world solutions when needed. Thank you so much for having me, and now I'm going to pass on to Tara.
Thank you, Neil. Hi, everyone. My name is Tara, and I'm reporting live from my dorm room. My story with the IIC began last year, and I came to the institution having already declared a major in art history. But as a lifelong lover of the outdoors and the environment, I really wanted to get involved with the IIC. I requested to do an independent research study with Professor Swaddle based on my recent internship experience in social advocacy and philanthropy. I was able to find a research question that was both relevant to my work as a social impact intern and to environmental conservation. After writing that paper with Professor Swaddle in the fall, I didn't want my involvement with the IIC to end there, so I applied to the 2021 Conservation Research Program, where I was able to embark on a new conservation journey. My project this year focuses on creating an education curriculum that teaches young students about the environment and what conservation is. My time with the IIC has influenced me so much that I am planning to declare my environmental policy major in addition to my art history one. Both my double major and my research project really show that the IIC will be able to link conservation with any major and any discipline. So come as you are to the IIC, because there will always be a research project here that fits you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. And then finally, we're going to hear from Kat Bagansky, who's a senior who is a double majoring in anthropology and environmental policy.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to echo much of what Pam Collins expressed, but from the opposite student perspective. I think that one of the ways that the IIC has really enhanced my experience as a William and Mary student the most in this past year has been the opportunity for research and collaboration with conservation partners. Research is such a huge part of the undergraduate experience at William and Mary, but sometimes it can be pretty hard to find a project that really feels like it's going to have a lasting external human impact. Through the IIC, I was connected with the Wildlife Conservation Society and had the opportunity to work with them for 6 months to design and implement a research project focusing on conservation of the 5 great forests of Mesoamerica. Working with WCS, I was able to lead a session on collaborative mapping methods and create a series of GIS maps highlighting the various dimensions of degradation and resilience in the 5 forests. I also drafted an outline for a conservation strategy report that can be used for grant proposals, to share information with WCS donors, and as a blueprint for approaching conservation and restoration work in the future. This work was challenging, and it required me to learn so many new technical and professional skills, but it was also incredibly fulfilling. I know that all of the hours I spent mapping and researching directly contribute to WCS's efforts to strengthen the forests and support the local and Indigenous communities that live within and around them. I think that any William and Mary student would benefit from a relationship with the IIC like I have had, because it provides an outlet for real world, meaningful application of the academic and technical skills that we spend our days fostering. I'm really excited and proud to see the impact that we have had so far as an institute, and I'm really glad that I get to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kat. So again, thank you all for sharing your insight into the potential of the IIC. Like I said, this is really a community-led effort, and we're so thankful for our growing and supportive IIC network. I think we have time for just one question from Kira, which is, how is IIC's approach to significantly different from traditional conservation efforts. I'll have Rob or John jump in.
I was first on mute, so I'll go first.
Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Kira. Rob's there too as well. He can talk with me. So I think what's really different is part of what many of the external partners and the students reflected on. It's the multidisciplinary, but also integrative approach that we're taking to build these different human lenses into the approach to conservation and really be centered on human-focused solutions. Most conservation problems are human-caused, of course, and so the solutions also have to be human-centered. Yes, they reflect upon the underlying biodiversity, but in their heart, they have to address the well-being of people, and they have to be relevant and useful and culturally appropriate for the site in which the action is taken.
And one other addition to that, just real quickly, is that I think one of the differences in our approach is that we are, as an academic institution, working directly with external partners to let them drive the challenges that we're going to help take on. So we're not driving the research questions, we're working with our partners to identify important conservation challenges and research questions, and then using these multidisciplinary teams to solve those.
Great. Well, thank you for all of your questions. As I mentioned at the beginning, we would like to invite you all to join us after tonight's event for a Zoom Hangout, where we can answer more of your questions or just chat generally about the IIC. So to join us for the Zoom Hangout, click on the Zoom link that we'll put in the chat. And before we jump to the world debut of the new IIC video, I'd like to remind you all to sign up to subscribe to the IIC listserv. And please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or if you'd like to talk about ways that you might be able to get involved with these efforts. We'd love to hear your feedback and your perspectives and brainstorm ways that we can collaborate on this important call to action. So thank you for joining us tonight and welcome to the IIC Conservation Network. So we're going to hand it over to Ashley, who's going to debut our film.
We are looking at the globe and everybody in it. No matter where they live, no matter how they've lived, we just want humanity and nature to survive long term.
The challenges we're facing globally are quite complex. We're facing a loss of biodiversity, we're facing climate change, we're facing widespread habitat loss as human populations are increasing and we're seeing changes in land use. And so because these challenges are so complex and because humans are so connected to the environment, there's a real need to take an integrative approach to conservation.
The IIC is a new initiative at William & Mary with a focus on improved conservation, biodiversity, and landscape conservation around the world.
And we have that I in the middle of our name for integrated because we mean integrative across disciplines, where we're not just looking at biodiversity and ecosystems, but also thinking about the livelihoods of people who live in areas of high biodiversity. So it's very important to be able to maintain and improve their quality of life, and also integrating aspects of cultural heritage and cultural diversity into the ways that we're working. So we very much have human lenses, the way that we're thinking about approaching conservation.
I think the opportunities are endless. It opens up so many avenues for collaboration. It's integrating all the ideas from all the areas, humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, even health sciences, to say, how do we use all these ideas from all these areas to improve and conserve nature?
The external component is really focused on identifying conservation partners that we can work with and build teams of students and faculty to address conservation challenges on the ground.
When I was asked to join, I was incredibly humbled and honored. And I wasn't even thinking about all the benefits that it would accrue to me personally, but I realized, oh my gosh, I have access to this vast network of people who really care about the same issues as I do, who might have access to research that I don't, who can introduce and broker introductions to other institutions, other kinds of organizations, people struggling with the same issues. And so it's been a way to just massively accelerate progress of our startup, which is focused on women and creating a healthy planet for all people in a way that I didn't even anticipate.
Conservation partners can get involved in the IIC in many ways. We are trying to find opportunities where the expertise at William & Mary matches the needs of conservation organizations related to planning, implementation, evaluation of conservation actions and management and policy. And so we're looking for partners who are interested in working closely with William & Mary students and faculty who have expertise in the field of research.
One of the greatest benefits to the students of being involved in the IIC is that they see their work come alive. They actually see the application. They can work with these partners and see in front of their eyes how the project makes a difference.
I worked with the Wildlife Conservation Society on a project dealing with the 5 Great Forests of Mesoamerica. And so the 5 Great Forests are facing a lot of forest loss and decline in the species that are there. So our goal was to identify those spaces that are most suited for restoration and conservation work. I helped find all of the data we needed to put together our GIS maps. I helped start draft a report about the whole process, what kind of work might be needed on the ground, where the money might come from to do it. It gave me so much more experience in so many different ways than I ever could have imagined it would have.
And that exposure to understanding cultures and understanding conservation in a different context. We'll certainly have projects in the US, but working with projects outside of the US is going to be critically important to the students and exposing them to new ways of thinking about conservation on the ground and trying to integrate different cultures and different ideas into the practice of conservation is going to make us unique as well.
So right now we're in the midst of developing an undergraduate curriculum with the hopes of launching a new undergraduate major in integrative conservation in the next 2 to 3 years. We see the major being based around these research experiences, with courses around those research experiences to develop the capacity of the students to engage even further and even more deeply with the conservation partners.
I hope that people will see it as a place to come to answer your questions critically to the field of conservation in different areas.
The long-term impact of the IIC really will be that we're building this bold, innovative, and creative generation of leaders who are willing to work together across disciplines to solve global conservation challenges in a meaningful way.
One of the reasons why we think we can have a positive global impact is because we're at a university setting, we have the flexibility to be a little innovative and to try some new things. And we think that approach is going to enhance conservation effectiveness on the ground.
And what we hope for the IIC is it makes a difference. It makes a difference to the students and the people that we engage with, but also it makes a difference to the actual conservation solutions, that we leave the world a better place than it was yesterday.
All right. Well, thank you all again for joining us. And please, if you're interested, join us for the IIC Zoom Hangout after the event. The link is in the chat. We'll see you there.